All right, should we get started? Welcome to day 2 of your semester. This is economic data analysis. I'm Taylor. This is my full credentials, but you can call me Taylor. Before we get started, how many of you have been in a classroom of mine before? Can I just get a raise of hands? Okay, so yeah, lots of familiar faces. If I don't recognize you, it's probably because we were in a very large class together, and there's so many people. But we're in a smaller environment, so I'm looking forward to getting to know all of you. So today we're going to do the basic sort of intro stuff. We'll get to know each other. We'll get to know what the class is doing. We'll do a bit of a demonstration of the kind of things we're going to be working with this semester. But before we get started, I just want to tell you a little bit about myself and what I've been doing this summer. So this class is called Economic Data Analysis. This is sort of the entire sort of basic skill set that we use as economists. It's an intro class. We'll talk more about what that means and what I expect of you all coming in and like what you can expect in the class itself over the semester. As I was putting this class together for this fall, I requested a of the registrar to change the name. So I cross out my credentials just so you remember to call me Taylor and not anything else. If you call me other things, I will scowl slightly. But I requested that the registrar change the name of the class from economic data analysis to economic data analysis. I had a baby this summer, so I'm a dad. This is my child. This is Maxine. These are just some cute pictures of the little family. So I've been spending this summer just holding a baby, which is, so if I don't get back to you on the weekend, that's what I'm doing. So this class is about economic data, but if it were about economic data analysis, it would be just the analysis that economists do who are fathers. So maybe this is a economic data analysis class. Also, this is the caliber of the joke you can expect. I'm now officially a dad, so I can do dad jokes but this class is actually economic data analysis. The registrar declined my request to change the name. Essentially, this is sort of a joke, but economic data analysis is essentially the types of things that we do as economists. It draws from a very broad skill set. So if you're not an economist and you don't plan on doing analysis of economic data, these skills are still super relevant. It's the same basic skill set that we use in every field of science, with slight variations. So we're focusing on the variations that we use in economics, but it's a very large, broad skill set. If you were on the fence about whether to take this class, and you're here, you made the right choice. You'll take a lot of classes in your time at Pitt. You'll probably forget the content of most of them. At least that's how it went for me in my undergrad. It's like you take a lot of classes and they develop the skills, but you often forget the actual content of what was in the class as you go through it. This class will be incredibly useful for you. For some students, this is the most useful class you'll ever take in college, and it's pitched that way. This is an intro class, so the only expectation coming in is that you know some basic statistics. So one of the prereqs is a statistics class, whether that was in high school or here in college. So you have some basic statistics background, but it's not required that you know anything else. So we're going to develop the skills from the ground floor. This is an intro class, but it's not, what we're doing is actually developing the true skills. So we're not playing with toys. We are playing with the true powerful skill set that we use as economists. So that should be exciting for you, and it should not be scary. How many of you played tennis, like in high school or still play in college? Okay, I played tennis on the high school team. I was third doubles, if that means anything to anyone. So I wasn't very good. I was fine, but I wasn't like a star player or anything. When I started learning tennis, how many of you have seen tennis? Probably most people. You know that crazy thing where you'll see the players, they'll when they're serving, they'll line up right on the line. They'll toss the ball with their non-dominant hand. Their racket will be behind their head, and then they'll swing forward and serve. There are a bunch of very technical skills, lots of little steps that it takes to perform a good serve. And when I was learning it, to me it looked daunting to learn all of those precise little movements and all those little skills. It's a lot of coordinated sequencing and such. And when I saw someone try to teach that, they promised that we would be able to learn it by the end of the instructional period. But it looked daunting at the beginning. That's, I think, a pretty good analogy for what this class is. I ended up learning pretty quickly how to do a serve. This class, there'll be a lot of tools that will look pretty daunting at the beginning. But as we go through, each step will feel not so intimidating. We'll do the entire sequence in progression, and by the end, you will have a complete skill set around analyzing economic data. This should be very exciting for you. We are not playing with toys. These are the real tools. I wrote my dissertation using similar tools to what we're going to talk about in this class. Like, obviously this is an intro class, so we're not going to be able to do everything, but we're going to get the basics. And we're going to do them very well. So I just want to spend the beginning here talking through what this will look like, to give you a sense on day one what to expect. We're going to talk about what I've taught this class many times, and every semester it goes very similarly. We end up at the end of the semester with a beautiful finished product from nearly everyone. And if you follow the steps, we're going to make that happen. So let's just talk through what we're doing with the class, what the content will be, and then we'll talk about like the course structure, and then we're going to get to know each other. This is a data class, and there's right around 60 people in the room. So instead of having us go around the room, I'm going to take a survey, and then we're going to analyze that survey as a way of getting to know each other. And we'll demonstrate some of the core principles of data analysis that way. So this is what we're doing today. And then I'm going to show you at the end some examples of past students' work, their final projects, and then we will pick up with core material on Thursday. Okay, so let's get started. You've all seen, I tried to erase some of this, but you've all seen, you've all taken like your intro economics classes probably. You've seen an equation like this before, where we have like a demand equation. And price is equal to some intercept, let's say it's 100 plus, and then we have a slope coefficient, so it's like the slope relationship between price and quantity. So we have a negative relationship between price and quantity, so let's say 2Q. And this is an equation that could represent some preferences. Like, this is a way of classifying preferences about something, right? So a way of thinking about behavior or what we like and what we don't like. I've written down some numbers on the board, right? There's a 100 on the board and there's a 2 on the board. These are numbers. And when you work with these in your theory classes, we just sort of write them down on the board. If you're an economist, you're thinking not just about the relationships between like a supply curve and a demand curve or whatever it is. You're thinking about where these numbers come from. So if we're trying to actually use a demand equation, we have to know what these numbers are. And when we're constructing them, we don't just pull them out of thin air. We actually pull them from data. So in some ways, what we're doing in this class is thinking about where these kinds of numbers come from, right? Like, we can think about supply and demand curves very generally, and that's what you do in your theory classes. But we truly care about what these numbers are, and we don't just make them up. They come from underlying data. So in some ways, this class is about how we get these numbers, how we actually construct the numbers that go into our models. Okay. So we use data to build these kinds of models, and you'll be able to do this by the end of the semester. Essentially, we can sort of break down what we do with data into a couple categories. So one of the things we do is describing the landscape. So have incomes risen over some period of time? These are just some examples. How has unemployment changed? This is a pretty big one right now. It's always a pretty big idea. Has the racial wealth gap narrowed? So we can ask lots of big, important questions that we would care about that describe sort of the ground truth. This is very difficult to do unless we have data and we have good tools for analyzing that data. These are just some example questions. We also care about economic theory. So we can ask questions not just about like what's going on, but also are there more fundamental theories that we can separate? So distinguishing between multiple potential explanations. So some of these, this was essentially my dissertation topic. Do voters with neighbors of the same party vote more? So one of my interests is political economy, and this is what I wrote an entire dissertation on. So we can ask questions about behavior and sort of the underlying structure of decision making. So is there some relationship there at all? Does the gender of a Lyft driver impact tipping rates? A well-studied question. And then if you study like game theory, a question we can ask and we have asked is whether cooperation rates depend on sort of the difficulty of coordination in prisoner's dilemma games. So lots of different types of questions we can ask with data. And the only way to really, sometimes we can answer these questions theoretically, but often we need data to be able to answer these kinds of questions. And this is a big part of what distinguishes economics today from economics 200 years ago. We try to answer our questions using measurement. And this tool set that we're developing in this class is how we do that, at least the basics. Okay, so what we're doing in this class, in the interest of developing the skills that allow us to do those kinds of things, what are we trying to do? I want you, by the end of the semester, to have at least the basics of the entire tool set that we actually use in the field. So let's just talk about what those skills are. So the first one is just summarizing data. So we're going to use tables and figures just to look at the data set and tell us what it actually contains. Often you'll have a data set that's pretty small, and you can just look at the different data points and try to describe it. But most of the time, you're going to have a data set that's too large for you to look at all at once. It's very difficult often to look at a data set and know what it contains. And so the tools we use are tables and figures. We're going to put a lot of emphasis on figures. I think it's much easier to communicate using figures. I think it's also much easier to understand for yourself using figures. And so we put a lot of emphasis on figures. So we're going to talk about visualizations and techniques for good visualization, which can help with the understanding process, even for yourself. And then we're going to start working with statistical models a little bit later in the semester. So we'll talk about where this will happen, but this is essentially once we get through the basic working with data tools in skill set 1, we're going to start working with the bigger statistical models. You've all taken statistics classes, so you've seen sort of the core ideas in this. Nothing fundamentally will be different than what you've seen before. It's just we're going to sequence it and we're going to build it up in a more systematic way. We're not doing statistical theory in this class. We will talk about some of the intuition, and I do expect for you to be able to understand how to build a model and how to interpret a model. But we're not going to be doing econometrics. We're not going to be writing down and proving any theorems in this class. This is about understanding the intuition and being able to work with the statistical models, not just in building them, but also interpreting them. Okay, so that's skill set 2. And then the third skill set we're going to focus in the last part of the semester. So this is not just can we interpret, understand, and then build a statistical model, but now let's try to communicate it. So a big part of what we do as economists is tell people what we found. And by the end of this semester, I'm going to ask you to do that to the class. So this should be potentially a little bit, I mean, not everyone likes presenting. If you don't, it's okay. You belong in this classroom. And if you do like presenting at the end of the semester, you'll get a chance to do that. Okay, so this is the big goal. I want you to be able to build appropriate statistical models for new problems and be able to interpret those results. And I should add to this, also communicate those results to someone who doesn't have the familiarity with the model that you have. Okay, this is what we're doing in this class. And by the end of the semester, you're going to be able to perform a tennis serve. Lots of little incremental skills, and by the end, you'll be able to put it all together. And no individual step will feel, we're going to do it in a way that's sequenced so that no step feels overwhelming. There will be hard parts, don't get me wrong. These are real skills, but by the end, you'll be able to do the entire process. I've seen this before. I've done it many semesters with my classrooms, and that's where we're going this semester. Okay, so how are we doing this? We're going to divide this into 6 parts. If you've taken my intro micro class, I also divide that into 6 parts. For whatever reason, that just six seems to work really well with the semester. I think it's a coincidence, but it may just be how my brain works. What are the 6 parts? The first one is what we're starting next class, which is exploratory data analysis, which is essentially a process for trying to summarize a variable. So this is looking at single variables and summarizing those single variables. So we're trying to summarize single variables. And then I call this pattern exploratory data analysis. So this is summarizing relationships between variables. That's going to be in part 2. Part 1 will take about 3 weeks. Part 2 will take about 2 weeks. So we'll talk about scatter plots will be the main tool, but also if you're excited about thinking about geography, so making maps, we'll talk about it there. And then in part 3, we're gonna start building the core statistical models. So this is starting with the basics of, you all are familiar with t-tests? I think everyone who's, at least most people who've taken a statistics class will have seen a t-test before. This is where we're going to start with statistical models, basically the ground floor. We're going to build up the intuition behind these things, and that's where we'll start. In part 4, this is really where we truly start using the big model. And this is not just used in economics, but it's a very widely used tool. What we call the general linear model, or if you've heard regression, different names for the same thing. I prefer this terminology, but if you like the word regression, part 4 is about regression. This is essentially an extension of the same idea that goes into the t-test. So same idea, we're gonna talk through the intuition, how it is the same concept as a t-test. And we're not gonna do any math around this. Well, we'll do a little bit of math, but not anything serious. So we're gonna start running regressions, or if you've heard ordinary least squares, or OLS, that's the same idea. These are 3 names for the same thing. And then part 5, we're gonna talk about some extensions. So this is where we start working with some of the variations on the core idea that we've introduced in part 4 of the general linear model. By the time we hit part 5, these will feel like natural extensions, really applications of the same way of thinking about variability in data to more advanced topics. This is really, I get excited about part 5. Part 3, okay, I get excited about all these parts. But this is, by the end of part 5, you're going to be able to read a lot of economics literature, which I'm very excited about. And then part 6 is where we sort of turn the intensity down a little bit and we start thinking about our final projects. So we're gonna talk about like, how do you pick the right model? How do you put together a document that describes your analysis process? And then how do you translate that into slides that then you can communicate to an audience? So we're gonna talk about visualization, or communication in part 6. So this is the core course structure. I just want to show you some pictures. We're going to talk a lot about visualization, so I wanted to give you some visualizations on day one, just to give you a sense of like how these things kind of look. In part one, we're focusing on univariate data, so it's like one variable at a time. There'll be some nuances to this, but it's essentially looking at single variables. So, for example, if we have a data set of wages, one thing we might want to do is to just create a histogram. So a histogram is like the first line when you're trying to understand the distribution of a data set. It can tell you very simply what wages look like. So most people are making, at least in this data set, this is not real data, but if it were, it would tell you that most people are making like under $25 an hour. Most of the data lives under $25 an hour. On the vertical axis, we just count how many people are in each one of these bins. And then visually, we can just tell where most people are. If you're looking at a table, or just the raw data itself, this is much harder to understand, especially if this data set is very large. So we use a summarization technique, a histogram, to make it much easier to understand what's contained in the variable. It's just one of the tools. And this is what we're going to start working with. We're not going to do it exactly next class, but we're going to start pretty soon. Then in part two, we're going to think about relationships between variables. And the core one here is the scatter plot. So you may be interested in the relationship between education and wages. As an educator, I'm particularly interested in this question, and as a person in education, you probably are too. We're going to talk about the returns to education once we hit part 4. We're actually going to look at real data from the census and analyze it together. And it will feel very natural once we get there. But one summarization tool for relationships is a scatter plot. So I have wages and years of education. It's very difficult to infer a relationship from the data itself. It's nearly impossible. If I were to show this to you, you would not be able to tell me if there's a relationship very easily. I mean, you could spend an hour like going row by row, but it's very difficult. Here, you can pick it up immediately. So this is one of the reasons we use summarization techniques. We want this because it's easier to understand. And understanding is the thing we're after. Okay, so scatterplot is our first line of defense typically when we talk about relationships between variables. And we can, think about different ways of looking at trends. Again, this is fake data, so don't build your life around it. Okay, and then in part 3, we're going to start building linear models, thinking about variability in data. How many of you have heard of the concept of a random variable before? Raise your hands. Okay, that's nice. So we're going to talk about random variables. Data is just a sequence of draws from a random variable. So in part 3, we're going to start thinking about statistics. This is where we're going to return to these core statistics ideas that you've already been exposed to. But we're going to do it in a slightly different way, in a way that allows us to see the general linear model a little more clearly. So we're going to talk about sample variation, the central limit theorem. How many of you have heard of the central limit theorem? Yeah, nice. Last time I taught the central limit theorem, I got I got goosebumps. It's a really powerful idea. We use it in every area of science. When we want to take data and turn it into knowledge, there's a really big idea embedded, and I'm excited to get there. So we're going to talk about testing, basic statistical testing, in part 3. But we're going to do it in a slightly different framework, I think, than is typically taught, so that we can get directly to the general linear model. We have variation in the data, which we can see here. So this is a box plot, and the sample mean, so the center weight of the data is this blue line, sort of right in the middle. And the question we might ask is the sample mean of 27 fundamentally different than 25? This is a very straightforward statistical question we can ask. This is a t-test. This is variation in the data. We may not know the underlying distribution of this data, but we can still answer questions about the random variation of the sample mean itself without needing to know the underlying distribution of the data, which we almost never know. So this gets us around one of the core issues in observing data, when we don't know what the underlying distribution of the data actually is. So we're going to talk about how we use this, but this allows us to answer questions about how wrong we might be with our hypotheses. So you've all, I think nearly everyone, you don't have to have seen this before. We're going to talk about the intuition here in its full detail, but I think most people have seen this already. But we're going to approach it from a slightly different perspective. I have the distribution on the vertical axis for a very particular reason, which we'll get to in part 3. In part 4, we're actually going to start extending this basic idea of variability in the sample mean into not just the intercept coefficient, not just where it hits the vertical axis, but also testing the variability in the slope coefficient. So not just the vertical axis, but also the slope. This is what we do with regression. It's the same idea as a t-test. We're testing whether the coefficient is statistically different from some number. And in this case, we test whether it's different from 0. Is there actually a slope here? And is that slope, like how wrong would we be if we said it was not 0? So this is the core idea in the general linear model. We scatter, we draw a line, and then we test whether it's different from a flat line. That's the idea. And if this feels simple, that's great. There's a lot of fancy things that we can do, but fundamentally they boil down to some very simple ideas. And what we're doing in this class is doing that boiling down. So you can go out into the world and read fancy statistical papers if you want to, knowing the basic ideas. Okay, and then in part 5, we're going to do some more fancy things. By this time, it'll feel pretty straightforward what we're doing. But one question we can ask that's not easy to ask with the simple general linear model with just simple regression is something like this. Are there different relationships, different slopes, or different intercepts between different groups? So one example we'll come to is differential returns to education by gender. And we're actually going to look at the census records to test whether there's a gender wage gap. So the picture we can draw is if we're just looking at, if we're not breaking this out by group, we have this red line. But if we have more than one group, what we can do is just separate those two groups in a scatter plot and draw separate lines. And we're going to be able to build these models from the core idea of sample variation and linear models to be able to do this. But fundamentally, it's just drawing lines separately through multiple subsets of the data. Okay, does it feel natural? If it doesn't, you're welcome. Everyone is welcome in this room, and by the time we hit this topic, it will feel natural to you too. Okay, and then the last part is communicating with data. So what I want to do here, I've been talking at you for a while, and we're going to pause for a second in a second, but I just want to show you some examples of excellent student work from past semesters. During finals week, when we do presentations, I get a lot of reward from seeing what students have been working on. So I just want to highlight some of that for you and give you a sense of what this looks like. So I had two students ask this question, whether economic recessions affect the decision to have children in the short term. So this is sort of relevant to my life. I just had a child, as I told you. Having children is expensive, and during recessions, you have less money. And so as your income goes down, by economic theory, as income goes down, demand generally goes down for most things, for normal goods, right? So as income goes down, you buy less. And one thing we can do with economic theory is think about the decision to have a child sort of as like buying offspring. It's like it doesn't really like feel right, but that you can think of decisions in that framework. You don't buy children, but at least you shouldn't. So what they did is essentially ask this question of the data: is there a relationship there? And they framed this as a causal relationship, but what they were not able to get at a causal relationship, just observing data. So we want to be pretty careful about these things. But what they were able to do is look at summary statistics, so GDP over time. So they have GDP as a time series. And as we're looking through these things, we can always make our work better. This was excellent work in the context of what we did. I'm going to show you some tools for visualization techniques of time series data in part 2. But this, in my mind, is excellent work. So we have a time series of GDP over time. And then, and so you can see recessions. So this was the Great Recession, and then this was COVID. And then we can also see the fertility rate over time. So 2 time series, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And what they did is create a scatter plot. So on the horizontal axis, they had the change in GDP. So we'll talk about why they're using change in GDP and not just GDP itself. But we have change in GDP on the horizontal axis. So it's measuring whether GDP is going up or going down. And then on the vertical axis, they have the average fertility rate in the following year. So they're looking at, it takes a while for a child to turn from a fetus into a live baby. And so what they're doing is looking downstream. So they're using a sort of lag to be able to measure. So you make the decision, and then the child appears in your life about a year later. So they're using a year later. And what they found is during times with higher growth rates, there is more decisions to have children. So people have more children in times of higher GDP growth, which I think is a pretty amazing result. So they pointed out a few things, but what they did is give us a very clear description of what they're looking at, and then a very clear summary of what they found. And they framed it correctly here in non-causal language. This does not allow us insight into the causal relationship between these two things, between the change in GDP and the decision to have a child. But it does tell us an association or a relationship. So they frame this very well. Every 1% increase in GDP growth is associated with a 3-point increase in the fertility rate. And then they told us how confident they were. This is amazing. If I can see work like this semester, I'll be very happy. Okay, any questions here? I've been talking at you for so long. Okay, I love this. Do you want to see another one? Okay. Here's another one about, I promise I picked these before my baby was born, so this is not, my students were just thinking about parenting, I guess, when putting these things together. This was last fall. So we also had an election last fall, and so this student was interested in the relationship between single-parent households and the turnout decision. So if you've ever voted, which I hope you have, it can take a while. You go to the polling place. It requires, 5 to 30 minutes to get there. And then once you're there, sometimes there's a line, and so you have to wait in line. Thankfully, my polling place almost never has a line, but lots of polling places do. So you might have to wait when you're there. And then you have to get back home. And during this time, if you're a single parent, where is your child? Well, maybe they're at daycare. But it's much harder for you as an individual to go and vote if you're a single parent. You have to think about where your child is. Where if you're a two-parent household, like if I were to go vote, I could just hand my child to my wife, and then I could go vote. And then she could hand my child back to me, and she could go vote. So it's much easier for two-parent households to vote than it would be for single-parent households. So that was the motivating idea. It's about behavior and decision-making under constraints, which is fundamentally an economics question. So what she did is put together a data set on the percentage of single-parent households by, I believe this was by county across 5 swing states. And then on the vertical axis, she had voting turnout percentage. So we have percentage of single-family households against voting percentage. And she found a negative relationship here. So this was not a causal relationship. We're not going to be able to establish causality in nearly any case. We're going to talk about how we think about causality in part 5. But most of what we're going to be doing in this class is simply establishing relationships between variables and separating it from statistical noise. But that does not allow us to talk about causality. So the student correctly framed this as a relationship and not an effect. Okay, so is there a relationship here? And she found this conclusion. She gave us p-values and the general linear models. And if this looks like a demand equation to you, you're on the right track. That's where it comes from. The conclusion here is that it seems to be a relationship here. It may be coming from other things, but there's definitely a relationship between turnout rates and single-family households. I think this is amazing. If I could see this as your final presentation, that would be amazing. Good theory. So like you're thinking about something that you would expect to see in the data, you go to the data and you check. And you use statistical tools like this. What we're getting this semester is better statistical tools than the students from the semester that I'm drawing from. So you're going to have more powerful tools than this. But this is excellent work. Good theory, good presentation. All right, any questions here? Sorry, I'm not forgetting about you all. Okay, I love this. Do you want to see maybe one more? Let's do this one. This was another good question. Again, this was the fall semester where we had our presidential election, and so we were thinking a lot about voting decisions. And so what they did is think about the education levels and vote share. So broken out by county, I believe. They had a null hypothesis. They clearly stated what their expectation was, so that the slope, the relationship between education level by county and voter turnout was 0, so it was a flat line. And then they clearly stated their null hypothesis. They did a little bit of summary visualization here. So breaking on the horizontal axis, we have education level, and then the share on the vertical axis. But their main idea was to find a relationship, whether a relationship exists between share of any particular education level and vote share. So they were looking at the political party in that county. So they found a relationship in both of these cases, and I thought this was I think I would minimize the complexity of these slides a little bit, make it a little bit simpler. But I thought this was excellent statistical work. They had a question they were interested in, which was very relevant at the time, and they built statistical models to try to test these things. And what they found is that there seems to be a relationship between education attainment by county and the party that these counties are voting for in Pennsylvania. So very interesting question and good statistical analysis. This is one of those questions that we can actually, in this class, we're going to develop tools to be able to do slightly better than this analysis here. All of this is not to minimize the work here. This is great work, and that's why I'm presenting it. Okay, any questions? So lots of good theory, lots of good statistical work I've seen from past students, and I'm just really looking forward to seeing what you all put together this semester. But you don't know yet how we're setting up the class. I've been talking about you for so long. So let's talk about the course for a second, and then we're going to take a survey, and then we'll get to know each other real quick, and then I'll send you on your way. The class, we've talked about what we're doing in the class, the final projects, how they've looked in the past. I just want to show you some of the resources. We will be using Excel, and we will be using Python. If this is terrifying to you, you can take that terror knob and turn it way down. We're going to do this step by step. Writing code can look daunting if you look at just a whole pile of code. But what we're going to do is build this up step by step so that it feels natural. There's no textbook for the class officially, but these are some very good textbooks. Dustin Fife is a psychologist that wrote a statistics textbook for looking at psychology data. Albert Cairo wrote a book on how to lie with statistics, which I think is an amazing book about visualizations. How to lie with statistics, and then how to not lie, which is the main point, and how to identify when people are lying at you with data. And then this is a more standard econometrics textbook. So you can look at these things if you like. It's not required. But if you want a little bit of extra, take a look at these. I want to show you the course website. Actually, before we do that, I just want to say a thing about how I design classes. I was a student once. I had a lot of good classes, and I had a lot of bad classes. I loved the classes that were straightforward. I knew what to expect. I knew where we were going, and I knew the expectations were fair. I loved the classes that didn't have busy work, where what we were doing was directly in line with what we were trying to do. So the assignments lined up with the course objectives, and it didn't feel like I was doing anything silly as a student. I liked the classes where it felt like my work was assessed fairly, and I never like exams. As a student and as faculty, I just don't like them. So we're not doing any big high stakes exams in this class. We're doing mini exams, and we'll come to that in a second. And I like classrooms where it felt like people were respected and paid attention to. This is a room of 60 people, so the challenges that go with big rooms of people. But I hope you can find people around you that you can connect with, and do my best to connect with as many of you as possible. But these are the things I like, and I've designed this class to try to facilitate that for you all. So that's some of what I'm trying to do with this class. With that goal, I've written a nice little website for you. I do a little bit of like coding on the side. So this is just a course website that will have all the materials. So the syllabus we'll come to in a second, the welcome slides, which we're going through right now, and then the class survey, which we're going to do in a second. And then I'll post the notebook and the data set of the survey after it's all been collected as we go into next class. But you can see the different parts. So all the 6 parts, you can browse through the different topics and the sequence if you like, the 6 different parts, and then the projects at the end. So these are, you can take a look at these, just some guidelines, project ideas, and what students did in the fall of 2024. I'll update this eventually with what some students did in the spring, but you can just look through the different topics, and then eventually yours will be added here too. Okay, so let's go to part 1. The way I've structured this, this is part 1 with univariate exploratory data analysis. So I record my classes, not for public use, but for your use if you happen to miss or you want to go back and review what we talked about in class. And when those videos are recorded, I post them here. So here we haven't gotten here yet, but once we do, and once we've covered that material, that video will be posted here. So you'll have access to it. And then when we talk about a part, a concept, we're also going to pair that with an example or an exercise. So you're going to bring your computers to class, and we're going to be working through examples in class. So exercises directly after we talk about a new topic. So this will feel like a progressive build. So each time we talk about a thing, you get to practice it, and then I'll send you home and do some homework. You'll see down below there's a link to a notebook, and then a couple of data sets that you can play around with. And the slides are here, so you can just have access to them. And then each topic will have separate homework. So anytime we introduce a new idea, I'm going to send you home and you'll do a bit of homework. I've broken the homework out by topic, so you can pair the homework assignment with the topic that it's sort of paired with. So you have that direct connection. It helps me keep things straight, and I think as a student it would help me keep things straight as well. So the first one is due on Friday, which we'll talk about in class next time. So no need to get started on it, but you can access it here. We have a notebook for the homework, and then once the class survey data is collected, I'll post it here. So you can just go through. Each topic has a concept with the slides, an exercise, and then a homework. And this will be true with every topic we cover. So this is the sequence. You'll begin to feel familiar with it as we go through. And then you can see the different parts. And then eventually, you don't need to watch these live streams, but this was from last semester. And we'll post new ones as we go through it. Okay, any questions here? Does that look nice? It's holding my baby, writing code, making a beautiful website for you. My little gift to you. Okay, so let's see. So we should talk about grading. Do y'all like grades? I think grades are sometimes necessary. If I could totally get rid of grades, I would think about doing that. But we live in a university environment where at the end of the semester, I need to give you an assessment on your work. So this is how we're doing grades this semester. Homework will count towards 20% of your grade. I've shown you sort of the sequence of homework. There'll be one homework assignment for every topic. Sometimes we'll cover more than one topic per class period, and definitely we'll have more than one class period per week. So there'll be multiple topic homeworks every Friday, due at 5. So sometimes like this week, the turnaround will be pretty quick. If it ever feels like the amount of time that I've given you isn't enough, all you have to do is email me saying that you don't have enough time and you want to turn it in on a Monday, and I'll just give you an extension. So don't feel so shy about those things. It's due on a Friday. We often will cover the stuff that's covered in the homework in class on Tuesday. So I can give you through Monday if you need a little bit of extra time. But I don't really want you to be doing work for me over the weekend. It's nice and sunny outside. So my favorite semesters were when I didn't have work on the homework, when I didn't have homework over the weekend. So we're making the official due date on Friday, but if it ever feels unfair, the amount of work, just send me an email and I'll just give you an extension. So that's 20% of your grade is the work you'll do by yourself or in groups. And with homework, I strongly encourage you to work in groups. So next class period, I'm going to have you get contact information from a bunch of people around you. We're going to have 5 mini exams, 1 through 4 every part, up to part 5. This is roughly every 2 weeks. The first one will be so part 1 will take about 3 weeks. And it will happen at the beginning of class. These are open book, open note. They are not about coding. So you're not going to actually be working with data. You may work with like a table or a visualization, but you're not going to be actually writing or like doing anything electronic. It's all going to be on paper. But these are open book, open notes. One nice thing I like to do is upweight your good exam scores and downweight your bad ones. So I'll drop your lowest one. Your lowest one counts for 0% of your grade. Your lowest, the next 2 worst ones are 5%. Your top 2 are 15%, and then your third is 10%. So I just upweight your good ones and downweight your bad ones. You don't have to tell me which ones you want to upweight and downweight because I know what they are. So I'll just do that automatically at the end of the semester. I also automatically drop your lowest 3. So don't email me telling me which ones you want to drop. I know which ones they are. And then your final capstone project is 30% of your grade. So this is the presentation and the paper. And the goal, as I've shown you with some examples, is for you to demonstrate the entire pipeline. So the entire workflow, the skill set that we work on this semester. So we're building incrementally towards this final project. So I want you to be thinking about questions that you might have of data. So an economic idea and how you might go about testing that. Each of you will have one. It may feel like a long way away, but I want you to be thinking about it as soon as possible. And then the last thing, I'm just going to give you 1% extra. We're going to start taking attendance after the add drop period. And I'll just give you 1% extra just because I feel generous. So it's not much, but it's nice. Any questions about this? Yeah. Yeah, so it'll just be out of like all of the ones that I take attendance for, and then it'll just be the proportion. Yeah. We can perform summary statistics on those things too. Any other questions? So my email policy, I don't know if I told you yet, but I had a child this summer, and I intend to spend the weekends holding my baby. So I may not get back to you over the weekend. And sometimes I'll get back to you in the evenings, but same kind of idea. I'll try to get back to you as quickly as I can. If like some things aren't very good to be asked over email, like it kind of requires a longer response. So if you think it might require like a paragraph or two for me to get back to you, maybe just ask it after class. Sometimes that's just easier to do. But I'll do my best. I might even say, let's talk about this after class. AI. We're going to talk about AI in this class. I write more than 50% of my code with AI. I probably couldn't have put together this beautiful website I have for you if I didn't have AI to help me. I'm not like a master of CSS and HTML, which goes into making a nice website. I use AI for it. I encourage you to use it as a tool. How many of you did like multiplication tables in elementary school? Yeah. How many of you use a calculator today? Yeah. You should do the multiplication table so you know how to do multiplication, so that you know what the calculator is doing. You should not use a calculator if you don't know how to multiply on your own. But if you've done the multiplication table, you should be using a calculator. You should be using a calculator if the calculator can do the work for you. But you have to understand what it's doing. So in this class, we're going to be using some AI. Probably everyone like tries to come up with the right analogy. No one knows what's going on right now, but this is the way we're thinking about it. I'm glad, like I need to know how to write code so that I can have an AI do it. My requirement for you, I hope you use AI, and we're gonna use it in class. Your work, when you turn it in, needs to be your own. You have to understand what it's doing. And if you use an AI on your assignments, just tell me that you're doing it. I don't want you to be turning in work that's not your own, and you're saying that it is. That's an academic integrity violation. You're allowed to use it. Does that distinction make sense? If you're ever unclear about those things, let's sit down and have a conversation about it, or just clarify it. You all know the academic conduct code. It's in every syllabus. Make sure you're familiar with it. It's a little bit more cut and dry with mini exams. It's all on paper. It can be open book and open note. The disability services and the policies around that in this class, if I was a student in a university today, I would qualify for disability services and I would take it. So if you qualify, take it. Just let me know what you need. So the first thing, we have homework due on Friday. You can't start yet. It's going to take you about 10 minutes to do once we have the survey data from the class. That'll be due on Friday. So it'll feel like a quick turnaround, but it's not going to take very much work. In fact, we might even start on it in class next time. The first mini exam is the first week of, the first class of week 3. This may move around a little bit, but that's where we're projecting it at the moment. And this will be like roughly the first couple of minutes of class. I feel like it's rude to put a mini exam at the end of class. So we'll do it at the beginning. And then for the Excel work we do, you have free access to Excel, Microsoft Excel, through the university's institutional license. So we can talk about how to get it set up there. In fact, I think I have a recorded video. How many of you have used Excel before and have it on your computers? Okay. For Python, you don't need to install anything on your computer. So we're going to be using Google Colab, which has Python and a Python environment built in, and nice AI coding tools, which we're going to talk about. Okay, so in the last 15 minutes here, right on time, we're going to take a survey, and then we're going to look at some of the survey responses just to get to know each other. And then we're going to do a bit of a demo, depending how long this takes. But if you go to the Canvas page, you should have a link to the main course website. You can also go to taylorjwyman.com and then find the course page there. But once you do, then you can click on the class survey, and it will bring up the class survey. And then we're just going to spend a minute talking, filling this out. So we'll take a couple minutes here. Let me know if you have any issues, and then we're going to download this data and talk about the things that I see in the classroom, just to get to know each other using data. Raise your hand if you have issues accessing anything. There are clearly some wrong answers here. Like, two people said their favorite color is orange. It's like, it's wrong. This is the right answer. This is a pretty good one. This is interesting. So, in the interest of time, I think we're just going to look at this summary that Google puts together. Next class, we're gonna dig into this a little bit more, and we're gonna try to maybe make some better visualizations than what Google is doing. This is one way of displaying data. This is a bar chart. Color is a categorical variable in some sense. We can look at individual groups. So here, black is a separate color from blue. You can think of like a spectrum, like a color wheel, or like the electromagnetic spectrum. But we often think of color, at least in this way, as a categorical variable. So we have a bunch of different categories of colors. And so we can look at different colors. How many miles away you grew up from Pittsburgh is a numerical variable. It's a measure of distance, and that measure of distance can be any number on the number line. So this is a continuous numerical variable. Anyone want to identify who you are furthest away from Pittsburgh? I live in Pittsburgh. I call Pittsburgh my home, so I'm at 0. Yeah, nice. Some others. So you can see to be better about our data, we would have to combine the person who wrote 0, it's Pittsburgh, with my answer, which is 0. So when we're thinking about data, we have to think about what we call data cleaning, which we're going to talk about a little bit more. But this is partially informative, so we need to do a better job of this. It's not so in order, but it's pretty good. Like this one, that should be in a different place. So we have to sort of worry about these things, make sure the data is clean before we present a figure to try to understand what we're looking at. And then this one, because I gave you a bunch of options, this is already pre-cleaned. Like I've given you multiple options, so we know exactly what the different categories are. How many of you did not have your major on this list? Yeah, I'm sorry. You belong in this classroom just like everyone else. I just had to cut the list. Couldn't go through and add every major. And also, I had 3 majors in college. Economics was one of them. So I had to, for those of you who are multiple majors, I'm sorry. So this is interesting. Economics is the biggest one. Finance, others. So lots of others. Computer science. Okay, biology, nice. And then, yeah, some others. So we'll talk about this more. Psychology and neuroscience, nice. But yeah, a lot of economics majors. If you're in this other category, you belong in this classroom just like an econ major. You don't have to be a particular major to take this class. And then we're starting to get into the spicy questions. So how much did you like your statistics class? This is me. I hated it. I didn't get it in college, or the first time I took it as an early student in college. It's one of my favorite things to think about now. It looks like a lot of you kind of liked your statistics classes. If you didn't like your statistics class, maybe we're in the same boat. But this is good. And then this is the really spicy one. How excited are you for this class? This is the wrong answer. This is also, I would say, wrong. Moderate excitement, sure, I'll take it. These look fine, but let's bump these numbers up next time. And then this is good information for me. This is like a systematic way for me to understand your skills coming in. So a lot of you have not taken Excel or know how to work with Excel or feel confident in Excel. If you're one of these people, if you are the 30% that answered that you're not confident in Excel, you belong in this room. You don't have to come in having a lot of knowledge about Excel. We're going to build these skills incrementally, and you should feel comfortable at every step. You don't need to feel confident in Excel. If you do, that's great. You might have to put in less work if you're confident. And then I wanted to plot this. This looks about right. I wanted to show you this figure. I figured it would look something like this. I want you to look around the classroom, realize that lots of people in this room on the confidence level with Python are at a 0. And that is to be expected. And if you don't feel confident, I want you to know that like 20 other people in the room have a 0 confidence level just like you. and you belong in this classroom too. So this is an intro class. You don't need to have any background experience with these things, and this should give you a bit of confidence that you're in the right place. If you're in this group, the three of you who are very competent in Python, that's great. You'll have to do a little bit less work getting familiar with Python. Those are probably the three computer science majors, which is great. Okay, the last thing we're going to do, I just want to show you what a notebook looks like before we take off. Actually, let's do this next time. It's sunny outside, I think. Nice meeting all of you. I'll get your names as you come and talk to me. I'll see you on Thursday.